This is a new kite template I just made, and I'll show you how I go about making my templates. One of the things I have learned is that the bow of the kite, which in this case is carbon fiber rod, I'm using, it's a 0.006, 0.06, an 06 rod diameter, and it's 25¼ inches long in this kite. It's a big, relatively big kite for what I normally fly, but I'm trying a different idea on it, and I thought I'd just share how the process is that I use. You can use any, of course, that works for you. But this is a piece of cardboard. It's a used priority mailbox that I opened up and flattened out, and it still has the places where it was bent and what have you. But I don't care. I'm going to use it flat, and that's fine. So I start by simply making a vertical line. That's the length of my spine. Now, I don't always know what the length of the spine is when I start. What I start with is the length of the bow. This kite I wanted to make with a bow 25¼ inches long. The reason that length is I haven't made kites with bows that long. I wanted to find out what they fly like. So that's what I did. Now, when I made this template, I also put a venting hole here in case I wanted to vent a kite of this shape. Since it's a little larger, it might work well to vent it and have it fly well in a wider range of wind speeds. I'm not going to put the hole in it on my first one, but I might in the second one. Now, I make this spine, and I make it so that it's about 20 inches long. But the spines aren't 20. This one is 18 inches. But I usually draw the line here on my template material, 20 inches long, just a straight vertical line. The next important part is determining how wide the wingtips will be. Well, for me, that's determined by the length of the bow. Now, the bow length is like this is the wingtip on this kite, on this template. And so this is where the bow will sit. These are my fold-over flaps that I will glue around the bow to hold it in place. And this is fundamentally how I design my kites. But holding this in place is kind of challenging because the thing's very springy. So what I do is I draw a perpendicular line to my spine, and I make it about 9 or 9¼ inches from the nose of the spine. And I draw this perpendicular line. I call this line the wingtip line because it is going to connect the right and left wingtips when I get through with this. So how wide will that wingtip line need to be? Well, I cut another piece of cardboard, just a strip. It's just a strip of cardboard. And I put a notch here and a notch here, which I think you can see. to hold this bow in place at the wingtips. And then I make a couple other notches in this piece of cardboard, and I draw a line from the end of each notch right through here, and that's what I line up. So I put this here on the wingtips, which in this case is 20¼ inches from one to the other. Then I put the ends of this bow into those two notches, and you can see it holds it. And I determined the distance here simply by eyeballing the shape of this curve. And I thought, well, you know, that looks like a pretty good curve. I don't really know if it's the right curve, the best curve, or anything like that, but it looks like it will do a good job of creating uniform tension from the sail material that's bonded to it along the bow. And that's what I want. So then I use masking tape, and I just tape this down. So it's at the wingtips, just like it will be when I build my kite. And then I draw what shape that is onto the template material. And then I decide how sharp of an angle I want the nose to be before or during the time it's coming in close contact with the bow. So I start at the wingtip, and I put my ruler at the nose of the kite and at one wingtip and draw a line. And then I move it a little bit, maybe 1/4 inch, so that it's from the nose, and then a 1/4 inch down along a little lower. See where that leads, and so on. And then I just look at it and say, well, I think that'll do. And that's how I come up with it. Nothing too fancy and nothing scientific for sure. But with my experience in making so darn many kites over the years, I found that generally speaking, if you were to take the wingtip and just drop down about a 1/4 inch or so, that's generally a very good place as a way to define the shape of the nose section that's forward of the bow. Now in this one, I happen to make it slightly curved. You can see here the ruler is straight, but there's just a very, very slight concave cutout on each of these nose sections. And the reason I did that is that this distance here is a little longer than I'm used to, and the sail material, which is just a thin polyfilm, is what I'm going to use, would probably flap around quite a bit. So I wanted to cut down just a little bit of the drag there, and so I made this slightly concave. And then I simply draw the line, and then where those lines meet with the bow, I measure so that they're the same on both sides. 3½ inches on each side in this instance. And I make a mark on the template material with a line that shows how large my hem will be. And I simply freehand a line that's parallel or close to the bow shape down to here and do the same on the other side. Now that takes care of making the nose and the general shape of the kite, and it's quite quick and pretty easy. And then I have the wingtip locations. Now it's a matter of determining where I'm going to make the tail part. Where is that going to be? Is that going to be long, short? So here, this nose, in this case, is 9¼ inches from the wingtip line right here to the nose. That's 9¼ So I'm going to make this 8½, or 8¾ 8¾ So 8¾ makes a total of 18 inches for the spine. Now, I could have made it longer, and the kite shape would be down here somewhere. I would have it shaped like this, where the spine would end here, and the trailing edge would be here. But in this case, I wanted the majority of the surface area of the kite tensioned by the bow. So I made this nose section a little bigger than the tail section. Then I just cut this out with a utility knife. Now this one, I'm trying something new. I put a little tab on the end that helps me to identify where my wingtip location is, because when I build the kite, I want that bow end of the bow, the tip of the bow, to be as close to that as possible. I'd like it to be fairly accurate. It doesn't have to be exact, but pretty close. And having this piece here gives me the ability to repeat exactly the position of the bow on the actual kite compared to where it was when I made the template. So I have a better chance, I think, of having it turn out pretty close. And that's basically how I go about drawing out and making my template. I like a full pattern template. Many kite makers prefer just making the template from 1/2 of the spine only, and then they fold their sail material in half and put that spine line right on the fold and cut it out that way. That way both sides are more guaranteed to be equal. This way, my measurements might be off a little bit. The way I cut it out might be a little bit off, so on. So there's a chance of a little bit of error here, more so than the other. But what it also provides for me is the opportunity to hot cut, if I want to hot cut the material, which I usually do with polyfilm. I use a soldering pencil like this, cheap 25 or 30 watt pencil, and I have glass underneath this cutting mat, and I'd simply put my template on my kite skin, and then I just kind of like draw around it with this hot pencil, soldering iron, and it melts its way through the polyfilm, and at the same time reinforces the edge of the polyfilm with the melted material that was melted in the cut. So I'll go over that in another video in more detail, but this is how I make the templates for my kites, how I go about with the process of it. Hope this helps.